In the midst of Canada's snow-capped mountains lay a small village. The village was so tiny that for everyday necessities, the residents had to travel to a nearby larger town. But to reach that town, one had to cross a dense, terrifying, and mysterious forest. At first, everything seemed normal, but then strange events began to occur. People started disappearing, especially those who walked through the forest alone. No screams were heard, no bodies were ever found, no trace left behind. People would just vanish and disappear forever. It reached a point where even in broad daylight, anyone who ventured into the forest alone would not return. The entire village was gripped by fear. In this village lived a brave man named Green. His wife, Hillary, was also extremely courageous. They were poor, yet rich in heart and deeply in love with each other. One day, Green went to a neighboring village for some urgent work, but he did not return that day. Night deepened, and Hillary's anxiety grew. She waited until morning, but when Green still hadn't come back, she set out after him through the forest. Sometime later, Green returned home. The house was empty. He asked his eldest son, Johnson, "Where is your mother?" Johnson replied, "She went after you." Hearing this, the ground beneath him vanished. He immediately dashed into the forest like a madman. He crossed the forest and reached the other village, but no one had seen Hillary there. Now he was certain something had happened in the forest. He re-entered the same terrifying forest. The sun was setting, shadows had grown long, and the trees whispered in a language unknown. Green wandered through the forest like a lunatic until he reached the part where no one had dared to go before. Suddenly, he saw a faint light flickering in the distance. He slowly moved toward it. There stood an old, dilapidated house. Green crept inside, and the sight he saw made his blood run cold. A man-eater roasting human flesh over the fire, devouring it like a beast. Now Green understood everything. This was the monster responsible for the villagers' disappearances. Green silently moved toward another room, and there, his wife Hillary was tied up with ropes. She was still alive. Fortunately, the man-eater had meat from his previous victim, which is why he had not touched Hillary yet. Green seized the opportunity and crafted a clever plan. He used various tricks, made noise, lured the man-eater outside, and suddenly attacked. After a fierce struggle, he managed to subdue the beast. Green tied him up and brought him back to the village. The entire village gathered. Green revealed the truth to everyone. The villagers were shocked, terrified, and furious. They immediately handed the man-eater over to the authorities. He was put on trial and ultimately sentenced to the harshest punishment. Finally, he was hanged. The villagers recognized Green's bravery. They aided him, rewarded him, and over time he prospered. But the forest's whispers can still be heard at night, and people still say that not every forest is home to mere animals. When Green handed the man-eater to the law, it felt like everything had ended. But the story did not end there. After a few months, strange events began again. At night, screams echoed from the forest. Red eyes flickered between the trees. And the most terrifying thing, the old house had been burned down, yet someone swore they saw flames flickering there again. One night, Green heard a knock at the door. Tap, tap, tap. He got up. No one was outside. But on the ground were footprints in the mud, leading straight into the forest. That same night, Green had a nightmare. The man-eater was hanging from the gallows, smiling, and he said, "I was not alone." Green jolted awake in panic. The next morning, news came that another villager had gone missing. This time, the person had been with 3 others. But strangely, the other 2 returned alive. and they reported that suddenly a thick fog had enveloped them, and the person with them vanished before their eyes. No sound, no struggle, just silence. Now Green was certain. The real danger was far from over. He ventured back into the forest. Night had fallen. The moon was hidden behind clouds. He reached the place where the old house once stood, and there a new door had appeared in the ground, made of iron, leading deep underground. Green's heart pounded wildly. He opened the door. Inside were stairs descending into darkness. From below, a faint whisper could be heard. "Hunger." Green lit a torch and stepped down. Below was a secret underground chamber. Old photographs lined the walls of people who had disappeared over the years, and in the center sat another figure. Its eyes were completely black. It was not the man-eater. It was something else. It whispered slowly, "You killed my servant." Green realized the first man-eater had only been a pawn. The real monster was something else, something inhuman. Suddenly, the entire room shook. The torch went out. A scream echoed through the entire forest. The next morning, Green did not return. The forest still stands there. The villages say sometimes two shadows can be seen among the trees. One is Green's, and the other belongs to the nameless one. After Green's disappearance, a deeper shadow of fear settled over the village. People no longer dared to go near the forest even in daylight. Hillary would stand by the door every day, hoping that perhaps Green would come back. But one night, the door opened by itself. A whisper entered with the cold wind. "We are hungry." Hillary's hair stood on end. Suddenly, footsteps came from outside. She went out. In the fog stood a shadow, tall, impossibly tall, and behind it stood Green. But he was no longer the same. His eyes were black, his face lifeless, bloodstains on his lips. Hillary trembled as she whispered, "Green?" He slowly lifted his head and smiled. That smile was not human. Suddenly, the tall shadow stepped forward and said, "He is ours now." The next morning, the villagers found both Green and Hillary missing. Inside the house, written on the wall in blood, was a single sentence: "The forest is alive." A few days later, some brave villagers went into the forest together. They searched for the basement door again. This time, when they entered, they saw dozens of people chained up, some alive, some dead, and in the center stood that same black-eyed entity. It said, "Every village must make a sacrifice." Suddenly, the door slammed shut by itself. Screams filled the air, and then silence. Today, the village has been erased from the map. They say only the forest remains there now. And at night, if anyone approaches, the sound of laughter can be heard among the trees, and sometimes a shadow swings from the gallows. Years passed. The village was completely abandoned. The houses were broken, windows screamed with the wind. But the forest, it was still alive. One day, a group of young adventurers from the city arrived out of curiosity. They had heard it was just an old story. They laughed. They filmed videos. "Let's see which man-eater comes." They mocked the tale. As evening fell, the temperature suddenly dropped. The tree branches shook as if something invisible was holding them. One of the boys suddenly froze. "Did you hear that?" Everyone went silent. From a distance came the sound of footsteps, but no one could be seen on the ground. Suddenly, the camera shut off on its own. On the phone screen, only one message appeared: "We have returned." The boys tried to run, but the path had changed. Where there had been an open field, now stood an old house, the same house where the man-eater once lived. The door slowly creaked open. Inside, darkness, and in the darkness stood Green. Behind him, Hillary, both with black eyes, faces lifeless. They spoke in unison. "Every generation must make a sacrifice." The next morning, the police found only a broken camera and deep drag marks on the ground leading straight into the forest. After the disappearance of the young adventurers, the government completely sealed off the area. Iron fences were erected, warning signs posted, entry forbidden. But the forest could not be contained. At night, lights could be seen beyond the fence. Sometimes smoke would rise. Sometimes screams echoed. One police officer who didn't believe in any of these stories entered the forest alone at night. He considered himself brave. He had a weapon, a flashlight, a radio. But as soon as he stepped inside, the radio went dead. The flashlight dimmed. Among the trees he saw a shadow. He moved forward, and suddenly his steps stopped.